And our first speaker today is somebody who has devoted over half his life to public service and is currently the Minister of Education for the province of Ontario, as well as a member of the provincial parliament. Please join me in welcoming to the forum, Stephen Lecce.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you for having me today. I know with an esteemed panelists and group of leaders within education and within technology. So I really appreciate the opportunity to chime into the entire team for permitting me a few minutes to open this up, and really thank you all for continuing to have this discussion in an age of COVID-19 and with the disruption on the economy and on the horizon. I just want to start off with an acknowledgement that the broader changes in society and how we consume, how we think, behavior will have significant longer-term impacts on, I think, people, both in the education system and beyond the broader country. I think that it provides an opportunity. Now, obviously, the challenge could be for some of us as policymakers and employers to have to constantly pivot in this world. It also creates significant opportunity. And one of the areas I want to speak about is really the merits of digital literacy and how the government is undertaking reform to ensure young people are better positioned to understand how to utilize technology and the fluency required in that area as a skill set and a competence that will aid them in education, no doubt, in the immediate term, but also in post-secondary, higher learning, and certainly in the private or public sectors, wherever their careers may take them. Having that capacity today, I would submit, is foundational. And in the research, as well as in the work we've done with a variety of employers and nonprofit and for-profit across the civil society, including, speaking to private sector unions and others, and what we keep hearing overwhelmingly is the skill set is required. And we believe that there is an opportunity to advance it. And if we can just sort of take a moment to reflect over the past year, we spent a year as a government making the case for online learning, while it is distinct from remote learning, which is the experience students would have received in the past months. The fact is, we do understand that importance, and we think linking that form of learning with the curriculum will be foundational, which is why, going back to the concept of digital literacy, it's about making sure our curriculum is available, is online, and ultimately accessible to students. So before we speak with the delivery model, the concept of empowering students and parents with more understanding of accessing curriculum is a net strength. And what we heard from many families, particularly from students in the province and their parents, is that they didn't really have a guide to support them through the curriculum. It had never been digitized in Ontario before. And as you will recall, we unveiled a new math curriculum for elementary students, grade essentially 1 to 8, a brand new math curriculum with new expectations, new areas of focus. Significant emphasis is on technology, those areas, including coding and areas where we think will give our young people a competitive advantage when they graduate in the job market. And so the concept of having the digital curriculum and why it's value added for many parents out there is they just felt a bit disconnected from their children's learning. And I think an empowering way to strengthen their ability to support their kids when they can is to have access to a curriculum and to a guide that supports them, that is available, that is written in a language that understands the audience, and in effect written for parents, almost by parents, to give them that knowledge and ultimately the value add of being able to follow along, understand the concepts and the fluidity within curriculum flowing from last year to next year, and the concepts that connect those dots. So that is very critical. We believe it's why we unveiled it in grade 9 math to take effect for this September, and we will be expanding upon that concept in future curriculum redevelopments within the province of Ontario. We also have, I think, undertaken, as I mentioned earlier, the past year, a fairly robust area of engagement to improve the online learning experience and providing an option for students to opt in or out, but ultimately to provide more course offerings. Again, we believe in the future of learning. The optionality provided with online learning is really critical. And I think it provides value added for many youngsters who just may not live in a community where, for a variety of reasons, and maybe economies of scale, not having that many students want to take those specialized courses, particularly STEM courses, we think this could be an opportunity, a game changer to create more diversity of courses, really in an area of competence we want to emphasize, which is STEM education, but not excluding other areas of social science and the curriculum that is relevant to them and important to them in their lives and potentially to their careers. So more options we see as a net strength. And that's why that's the basis for us really expending the resources, the time to make that case over the past year, frankly. And those were ultimately negotiated and ratified through our negotiations with our public sector unions. We have also, in the context of remote learning, Ontario is unique. In the context of, as I understand, we are the only province, at least so far as of yesterday when I've checked class, to have provided a choice for parents going into September. So looking retrospectively, many lessons learned, but I think the most foundational one, what we heard from parents, is they just want to have a choice of in class or online. We respect that and we provided that. And as I understand, we are the only province, at least today, to provide a credible, bona fide remote learning option, as well as an in-class option, which is a decision point that parents will make and school boards will respect. And they're doing that survey as we speak to sort of understand the quantum in each of those areas. But I think what's relevant is the first off is the enabling infrastructure to do it. We have ensured that virtual learning environments have been expanded to all schools in Ontario. We've ensured that our high schools in the province of Ontario, where much of the online learning will take place, all have internet in September. Elementary schools overwhelmingly do have internet, but for those that don't, they will be fully completed our broadband expansion by September of 2021. So it's really robust and active approach to getting technology into those environments. The virtual learning environment, the enabling technology that allows for that Zoom style classroom, that Google Classroom that we know is very important. That creates community, and ultimately, in the absence of being in class is the next best thing. It allows teachers to interface with their children directly. It permits an element of sense of humanity through technology to see, to laugh, to share, to discover, to challenge assumptions, to celebrate wins. I mean, to fail and try again. I mean, that type of motivation can be a derivative of this experience, even if I'm the first to acknowledge in class may be better for the majority of students. It still is prudent to provide it and to strengthen it. I think there's many lessons learned we applied over the spring to September. One of which, from an equity perspective, just to make sure that there's no child that is ultimately unable to receive that defensible education, particularly because of economics and equity considerations. So that's top of mind for us. It's the basis for continuous investments. Most recently, a month ago, where we unveiled the $15 million net new investments to procure tens of thousands of devices to help more families who face that challenge, technology gap, to get access to a device with internet when it is required or when they may need it. And I think that type of expansion of access and further liberalizing access to both the broadband to the device is a prudent step forward for the government and for school board to do. We have stepped it up dramatically, and we will continue to do so because we understand that the future learning can be a positive one so long as we can universalize access to it to the best possible, to the extent best possible, and that's what we seek. So we've done that. We've also ensured that the VLE capacities within our schools to enable those live classroom experiences, which they now are. And I'll just sort of speak more broadly about the concept of synchronous learning. Obviously the delivery model, asynchronous, synchronous, there's a variety of options that educators can use, but we believe in the context of the future of learning, the merit of having an educator live in front of you, providing that, guidance and mentorship is much more effective than, for example, YouTube or video-based learning asynchronously delivered. And what we've heard from parents and through consecutive surveys publicly released from school boards and even public opinion data is that parents want more of that. And the basis for it is not in the abstract, they just like it. It's that their child gets a better educational outcome from it. And the data of online learning historically is that the when it comes to success ratios within 5 percentage points of a child getting a course in class versus online. They're fairly competitive, and they continue to be led by an Ontario certified teacher, which is foundational. So that is really important. And so we made that case. We are stepping up the minimum standards for September and beyond to ensure that educators will provide synchronous learning and will require collaboration and cooperation from our unions in order to ensure that that experience can be universal, it's defensible, and ultimately just the right thing to do for our kids in a particularly challenging, extraordinary time in the context of how we teach, in the context of the broader society where we live. So I think that spirit is really important, and it's being required now more than ever. But we have and we will continue to step up that requirement and to make clear the benefits of live synchronous learning, especially in September, where some students and their families will opt for that delivery of education instead of online, instead of in-class learning, which is their choice. Part of this is part of our job in the ministry, and I think part of the discussion point today is, how do we continuously create a culture within our schools, within our education ecosystems of educators wanting to, incentivizing them to professionally develop, to learn skill sets that, to be frank, because of the disruption in COVID-19, for many of them, they had not contemplated and really had not perhaps invested too much time in learning. And it's not a criticism, it's a reality that many of them enjoyed the in-class learning model. Some of our educators, I think south of 15%, had VLE capacity lined up, set up, and it was those classes that were so seamlessly able to move into a cloud-based platform where the courses and materials were uploaded, everything was shared, videos were disseminated, and live synchronous learning carried on. That was a very positive experience. We saw that in some of the French boards, for example, but certainly not in all boards. And I think my aim is to standardize that experience, a defensible one for students and likewise for parents who I think seek the very best for their children. And so why I say that is an acknowledgement that professional development is to be critical to changing that culture and ultimately just to enabling our frontline workers to do the best they can in the extraordinarily difficult challenge they have of pivoting on the fly. And so what we've done throughout the summer and what we are doing in September as a mandate is providing webinars through the summer, which are optional, and a mandatory learning day focused on online learning and emphasis on synchronous learning, privacy elements, equity considerations, best practices to deal with circumstances. All these elements will be covered in the training, but the fact is we are doing so. We're not just doing it for our permanent staff, we're also doing it for occasional teachers and supply educators, etc., to make sure that whoever interfaces with your child for a day, because of a sick leave, or for the entire year, they understand how to teach effectively, how to motivate, and ultimately how to engender a broader response from the children that is engaged in the material and where they're seeing academic outputs that I think align with our curriculum goals. And so we're going to be providing more PD continuously through the year, certainly starting with a day dedicated in part to this area before school starts in September for all staff, for all educators and all occasional teachers as well in the province of Ontario. I think that's going to be very important to change that culture and to sort of create an annualized experience of development in this area. We've also, through Bill 197, the legislation we passed some weeks ago, included a provision to centralize the online learning delivery through TVO and TFO for the procurement of additional courses. We do believe utilizing credible standalone agencies of the government who are generations of building education systems as well as teaching kids, inspiring kids through a variety of ways, using both official languages is really important, with a brand that parents understand, that resonates, and I think that ultimately builds confidence. And that is really important for us as we give thoughts to how we expand our online learning protocol and online learning platform. And utilizing those agencies we think is best, not just from a taxpayer perspective, but really a pedagogical one. They have this long history of teaching online, of a digital footprint that is large, expansive, and global. You think of TFO's digital footprint, you think of TVO's, the ILC and their learning center that is educating upwards of 17, 18,000 children a year. It is strong. And so we think the centralization of that will be important as we try to create a standard experience and access to courses in the province. So we have, I think, for the past many months, and to be fair, governments successively have really tried to make an emphasis of this. I think with COVID-19, although, to be fair, the government, we have been communicating the merits of this well before this pandemic, but it only underscores the necessity to embrace this area of learning with the consideration for equity, ensuring the universalized access, and fundamentally that we ensure that parents, who are also in a unique position, are armed with the information and access to the curriculum that's digestible, understandable, and written for them. And we have done that for the first time, and we are endeavoring to do that widespread. We've also, in the context of even our curriculum updates, really emphasized that the areas of technology. In our grade 10 careers course, I unveiled about a year ago, which does feel like an eternity in the Ministry of Education. But when we unveiled that about a year ago, it had AI and a variety of other elements that just have never been included in the career paths of Ontario, and likewise in the curriculum. And that was really foundational that we embedded that type of learning right within our curriculum, as well as elements like creative thinking, collaboration, the soft skills that are also required to accompany the use of technology effectively in the context of how we do it. And I think one thing we are doing, as I noted in the math curriculum, in addition to the grade 10 careers course, is in our elementary curriculum mandating coding starting in grade 1 and financial literacy, computational skills, these areas where we think will really help our young people get a competitive advantage as they graduate and try to get into the workforce. So overall, a STEM emphasis, I think, is very much aligned with where the government is going and where we have been focusing on to date. We embrace theory of technology and learning. We recognize we have a responsibility to strengthen the delivery and the standards and the expectations from a parental perspective of the student, an obligation to remediate the equity challenges, and an opportunity to strengthen learning and training for our educators. And I think together, by doing so, we will reorient Ontario as a leader in this respect. And I think we already are. I mean, by any measurement in this country, at least, we are leading in the context of delivery of online learning, not just on a per capita basis, but in the quality of the Made in Ontario courses we have been able to develop that were led by educators in this province, but ultimately are gold standard courses that are sought by various English and French speaking jurisdictions, among others around the world, that want access to the curriculum and to the Canadian brand and to the value system and quality and excellence we generally are associated with when it comes to education. So this is very much important to us. We're going to continue to build upon those foundations and those fundamentals. And I just want to thank all the partners who are involved in this space. Most importantly, just want to thank the board for inviting me and really just giving me an opportunity to express my shared interest in this area and my determination to strengthen it with a way that I think leaves no child behind. It ultimately inspires young people to pursue these areas of learning, because we want to inspire them to pursue STEM educated careers, among others, as they graduate, and really want to further align the skills required in the labor market with young people. I think as a concluding comment, not being the oldest Minister of Education that perhaps will speak to you today or in the past, I also think there's a generational lens here that I perhaps uniquely, perhaps modestly, authentically deliver on in the context of seeing this as an important evolution in our society and championing it and understanding that young people are comfortable with these mediums, notwithstanding, as I earlier said, the strengths of in-class delivery, in-class education certainly is a sound option for all children. But for some, I speak to special education families, speak to some children who historically have issues in class, this can be an excellent source. So that element of collaboration with further alignment with labor market needs, I think can only be a positive outcome. And as we look to the data points of the province or the country, where you see twice the rate of youth unemployment, where you see very high levels of debt to income ratios for millennials, I mean, the data points are concerning. And the question mark is, how do we as policy leaders ultimately change that trajectory for generational citizens to be more enabled to succeed? And I don't look at that singularly through monetary elements. That's not the measurement of success of a person, but it is important that they are set up to have some sense of financial sustainability and confidence that they could get a job related to their skills. And that's why this emphasis on technology, I think, is critical. I think it will be a game changer to reposition Ontario as a leader in this respect. So I thank you all for the opportunity. Wish you a very positive and productive day. And thank you again for the opportunity to address you in what has been a very busy afternoon. So thank you so much for the opportunity.
Well, thank you, Stephen. Really appreciate your candid, thoughtful, and comprehensive description of your office's approach and what you're hearing from your constituents. You know, your vision and drive for improved outcomes were on full display there. So thank you very much.